Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So obviously by the title of this video, you know that I'm going to be talking about my journey to motherhood. It has not been easy at times. It has been filled with heartbreak and pain, but also joy and love and excitement. So if this is something that you would like to hear and something that you would like to know about, then just keep watching. So to start this whole journey, we have to go back to September of 2018. So in September of 2018 is when Kaylin and I decided we were going to start trying. And we both kind of went in to it with the mindset of, if it happens at first try, that's awesome. But if it doesn't, like, we're not going to get discouraged, because it takes some people years to get pregnant, some people months. And since we hadn't tried before, obviously we didn't know what our journey was going to be like and what it was going to take for us to get pregnant. So we started trying, and a couple months went by and nothing was happening. I decided to order an ovulation kit on Amazon, and the kit had like ovulation strips, and then it also had like HCG strips that test the hormone for a pregnancy. So it would obviously, if you were pregnant, it would show that you had the pregnancy hormone. So I started tracking my ovulation, and December rolls around, and I remember the end of December just feeling a little off. I had taken pregnancy tests every single month up until then. I'm a very impatient person, and it was one of those things where, since we were actively trying, I wanted to know as soon as I could. So I was taking tests before my period, and obviously they were all negative. So December 30th rolls around, and again, I just remember feeling funny, feeling a little off. So I took one of the little pregnancy strips and the ovulation kit thing, and I remember seeing this faint line. And I don't know if I was like, okay, my eyes might be playing tricks on themselves. I was like, is this a positive? I was like, is there a line? Am I just seeing a line because I want to see a line? And, you know, timing is really ironic, because Kaylin's birthday is on New Year's Eve, and we were actually supposed to go out on New Year's Eve. And I knew that if I was pregnant, obviously I wouldn't be drinking. I want to surprise Kaylin because tomorrow was his birthday. Like, how awesome would this be? So I didn't have any pregnancy tests, actually, like normal pregnancy tests. And I just needed to know. So I wasn't going to tell him, but I also knew that like I couldn't keep that information in, especially since we were going over to our friend's house that night for like dinner and drinks and stuff. And again, I just like, I wanted to know if I was pregnant. Like, I didn't want to drink anything whatsoever. Even if I was like super early on, I was like, I can't do it. So I ended up telling him, and he was just like, well, why don't you wait? Like, you're not even supposed to be on your period yet. Like, you're being a little crazy pants with all of this testing so early. But again, I explained to him like, hey, like, we're going out, blah, blah, blah. So I ran to Walmart, and I took the test, and I remember just kind of being so anxious, but yet so excited, because I, again, kept looking at that strip and being like, I promise I see a line. Like, I'm not making this up. There's a line. And just knowing that, you know, a couple months had gone by and nothing was happening, but I had wanted this for so long. You know, I can remember back to being a little girl and just not really knowing 100% what I wanted to do career-wise, and, you know, obviously who I was going to be with. But like, the one thing that I knew like deep down in my soul was that I was going to be a mom. I wanted to be a mom. I knew I was meant to be a mom. And so I was just so excited for this to be happening. And I remember looking at the actual pregnancy test, and I got a clear blue pack. So it had like the plus or minus, and then it had the digital where it said pregnant or not pregnant. So I took the plus or minus, and I remember again seeing this like little faint line. But I also was kind of like, am I seeing this because I want to see this, or is there a line? So I remember taking the test over to my friend's house and just kind of whipping it out and being like, is this positive? Like, is there a line? So they both kind of saw what I saw. They were like, okay, it looks like there's a line, but it's super, super faint. So I went to bed that night, woke up the next morning, and decided I was just going to take the digital test. So I took the digital test, and I was standing in the kitchen, and Kaylin was standing there, and I flipped it over, and it said pregnant. And I can't describe the feeling that I had when I saw that word. Because it was one of those things where, you know, the plus or minus was cool and exciting. But again, I was just kind of like, am I making myself believe that there's a line there because I want there to be a line? But I knew without a doubt that if it said pregnant or not pregnant, like, it was one or the other. And so it said pregnant, and I just remember being so completely excited, and Kaylin kind of being a little more reserved. I think he was just kind of like, again, you haven't started your period yet. There are such things as false positives. And it kind of made me a little sad that he wasn't that excited. I'm not saying he wasn't excited at all, but he was just a lot more reserved in getting to that point than I was. So I remember calling my doctor's office the next, like, a day or two after that, and scheduling our first appointment, and just being so excited to know 100% if this was happening, if I was pregnant. You know, I knew that this is the appointment where you get to see the baby for the first time, you get to hear the heartbeat, and it's just a really exciting time, especially when it's your first pregnancy. I mean, it's exciting no matter what pregnancy it is, but especially when it's your first, because again, you've never experienced this before and you've never seen this before. So my first appointment was on a Monday. We went into that appointment, and again, I just remember being so anxious and excited, but nervous at the same time. Never, you know, did I think anything negative or anything was going to be wrong. I was just excited to see this baby. Putting it up on the screen and it just not looking like I thought it was supposed to. I had looked at pictures of ultrasounds before, and, you know, for the most part, they look like a baby. You can tell it's like a little jelly bean. And I didn't really see anything. I saw the sac, but there wasn't really anything that resembled a baby. And I remember seeing something off to the side and just kind of being like, is that it? Like, that's a little weird. And so the doctor and the ultrasound tech kind of looked at everything, and they were like, okay, well, don't worry. They were like, we think we might have the dates mixed up. Like, your baby just seems to be measuring at 6 weeks, not 8 weeks. So we need to see you back in a week just to see if the baby's growing, obviously, like it should be. I think we're just a little sooner than we thought. But the whole time they were saying all of this to me, I knew, because we had been tracking everything, and I knew when we had conceived that I should have been 8 weeks pregnant. It shouldn't be 6 weeks. So that whole next week, because they wanted to see me a week later, that whole next week I was just kind of in a very weird funk. I was in a mood, just because I was just so confused. And I think in the moment, being in the office, I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't really think of questions to ask or things to say. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, we'll wait a week, we'll go back, and hopefully, we'll get to hear a heartbeat and the baby will actually look like a baby. But again, I had never done this before, so I didn't know. I was like, every person's different. Maybe this is just what it's like for us. So that Friday rolled around, and I remember being at work and going to the bathroom and just seeing the little tiniest bit of something on the toilet paper and being like, okay, that's a little weird. So I went home that night and tried to be positive and was just like, just don't think about it. Don't give in to anything negative. So went to bed. I went to work Saturday. I honestly tried to just not think about it. And then that night rolled around. I got home and I went to the bathroom, and I just remember seeing what I saw and knowing what was happening. I sent a picture to my mom and I was like, is this what I think it is? And it was just that deep down feeling of this is what I think it is. I remember she came over. We were both super emotional about it. Again, I had called my doctor, told her what was happening, and she explained to me that in some pregnancies, this happens as far as like early bleeding sometimes can happen, but it doesn't mean, you know, the worst. So just try to be positive. She was like, I see you again on Monday. But if something else happens and if it gets worse, then call us back. So that I remember I couldn't really sleep that night. I deep down, I knew that something wasn't right. So the next morning I woke up Sunday morning and it had gotten worse. And the feeling that you have, you can't even describe. Nobody had really talked to me about what a miscarriage was going to be like. And I knew, you know, it's a very emotional thing, but I don't think a lot of women like to talk about it. It's not really something that people talk about. It's kind of a taboo topic. And I didn't really know how to process what was going on. And again, you know, Kaylin was trying to be as supportive as he could, and he was just trying to remain positive and say, you know, we're going back tomorrow for our next ultrasound. Like, we don't know that something is wrong. Like, this could just be happening. And as positive as I was trying to be, I knew, again, in the back of my mind that this wasn't normal. This shouldn't be happening. So we went to that appointment the next day, and my mom ended up coming with us, and she waited out in the waiting room. And I just remember praying and just begging God to let this not be happening. I didn't know if it was happening, how I was going to go on. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know what to think. And so they did the ultrasound, and unfortunately what I thought was happening was right. The baby was actually measuring at like 5.5 weeks now. And it's one of those things that I don't wish upon anybody. I never would want anybody to experience the pain of losing a child. You know, for me it was hard because, again, I didn't get to hear the heartbeat. I didn't really get to see a baby. There was a baby, but it didn't look like a baby. And my mind just went to, I don't know how women do this who hear a heartbeat, who, you know, see a baby, or the women who have stillborn baby. Like, there's just so much about losing a child, no matter what stage, that is never easy. And again, something not a lot of people want to talk about or open up about. Not to like diminish what was going on with us, but I knew that, like, you know, I couldn't imagine going through this with it being further along. Let's just put it that way. So I didn't know, because again, not a lot of people talk about it. I didn't really know what to expect. You know, the doctor was trying to explain things to me, and in that moment, it's like you just don't, you black out. I blacked out. I didn't know. I left that appointment not remembering anything that she had said. I just remember, all I could think was that my baby's gone. And I think the thing that people don't talk about and that I didn't prepare myself for. Because obviously you never really prepare yourself for that. I knew it was going to be a very emotional thing, but I didn't understand the physical aspect of it. And I don't think people talk about it. It is very, very traumatic. And, you know, it's one of those things where you just don't think it's ever going to end. I remember, you know, it took me 2 months to officially stop bleeding. And I did have some complications. They had to keep checking me, and I ended up getting ovarian cysts, but it was a problem because, and ovarian cysts are super common. So that wasn't the concerning part. The concerning part was the fact that they were rather large cysts, and they were starting to twist around my ovaries. And when they start to twist around your ovaries, there's a potential that you could lose your ovaries, which means I wouldn't have been able to have a baby. They could damage your ovaries, all bad things. And so there was a possibility that I was going to have surgery. The miscarriage wasn't progressing as quickly, I guess you could say, as it should have been. So there was also a possibility of me having a DNC, and it got to be very, very emotional. And I went to a very, very dark place. I 100% know I was depressed. I didn't really know how to handle it all. It broke me. It was one of those things that just, you never think that's going to happen to you, and it did. And I didn't know how I was going to get out of it. I didn't know how I was going to be normal again. I just knew that my life was obviously going to continue, and my life was going to go on, and at some point I had to not move on, but I had to go back to my normal everyday life. You know, I did lay in bed for days, and I just remember not really being there. I remember being there, but not really mentally. It's kind of like I just felt like a shell. To the point where eventually Kaylin's like, you have to go outside. Like, let's go get lunch. You've got to get fresh air. Like, you've got to get up. You've got to get dressed. Like, you have to get out. So that happened in February, and we still wanted to try. It was one of those things where we needed to have time to heal and to process what was going on. So we didn't instantly want to try again, but we knew we still wanted to try to have a baby. But I knew that if this happened again, and I wasn't trying to be negative, but again, it's one of those things where I didn't think it was going to happen to begin with, and it did. So I was terrified, because I was like, if this happens again, this one broke me. And I was like, if it happens again, it'll destroy me. So I was scared. I was terrified. Anybody would be. So we gave it a couple months, and we processed everything, and we healed. And you don't ever fully heal from that, from losing a child. You can't. We decided in June, so this was June of 2019, that we were ready to start trying again. So we started trying, and then 4th of July, I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. And again, it's one of those things where, because of what we went through, I told myself, you can be excited, but don't get too excited because of what had happened. So I scheduled a doctor's appointment, and I've never been more scared, more nervous in my life. Again, this was something that I'd always wanted, but you know, it was hard. It was hard to be excited about it, and it was hard to be positive, but at the same time, like before, I just didn't want to feed into any negativity, but I was terrified. So we went into our 8-week appointment, and what I saw on the screen was honestly unbelievable. I don't want to cry like this whole video. God. I just remember seeing this little gummy bear and being like, that's a baby. And I just remember it being so surreal, and seeing the heart flicker, and Kaylin and I just looked at each other and we both just started crying. And because I think up until that point, neither one of us wanted to fully be like, okay, we're pregnant. Like, I think we both, again, from what we had gone through, just tried to be super reserved about getting so emotionally excited. And you know, before with our first pregnancy, I actually went out and bought a couple things before our first appointment, and this time I didn't. I was like, I can't do this to myself. I can't get excited. So seeing that baby made it real. And I remember just thanking God that, you know, this is happening, this is real. But we both left that appointment so happy and so over the moon, but honestly at the same time still terrified, because we just didn't want anything to happen, especially since this is how I thought it was supposed to be. You know, we saw our little gummy bear, there was a heartbeat, and it was the best feeling in the world. You know, there's really no way to describe seeing your baby for the first time. I was scared, obviously, most of my pregnancy. In the back of my mind, I just prayed and hoped, and you know, I prayed to God that everything would be okay. And every appointment we went to, she was just getting bigger and bigger and growing like she should have been, and she was perfect. You can clearly hear her. And on March 13th of 2020, at 7:21 a.m., Miss Kinley Carter was born. She likes to make her presence known. But I definitely wanted to make this video just in case anybody comes across it that struggled with anything that I struggled with. I want you to know that you're not alone. I feel your pain. I know what you're feeling. I'm so excited for this chapter and this whole journey. I've never been more in love with another human being in my life. It is so crazy. It is true what they say. You cannot describe this kind of love until you experience it. It is 100% unconditional, and there is nothing like it. I just wanted to make this video to share my experience and share my story, and to be, you know, very transparent. And hopefully with this video, somebody will feel less alone.